Welcome to Fantasy Football Live, presented by Ram Trucks. Andy Behrens, Matt Harmon, Tera Roberts. I'm Jason Fitz. For the next hour, you know what we're going to do. We're going to answer every single question you've ever had about fantasy football. We're going to cover. We're almost to the halfway mark. We are already to week 8. We've gotten this far in. Matt Harmon, your level of sanity, now that we're 8 weeks in and you've had 2 months of getting to see me every Sunday morning, 1 to 10, your level of joy down in your heart is?
Oh, I mean, seeing you 10 out of 10, knowing that, we're at that halfway point of the season when, like my buddy Sigmund Bloom always says, you can be right and wrong about a player, a team, a prediction over the course of one season. And that's kind of how it goes. Like, we feel pretty good about who these teams are, who these players are, where everybody stands right now. But that can easily just get torn to shreds here over the second half of the season. So can't feel too great, too joyful about that. But seeing you every Sunday morning, Fitz, that's obviously the highlight.
Highlight. Andy Behrens, you know my love of Halloween. So give me like your level of Halloween scary so far for the season. We're 8 weeks in. Like, is this like a mild, Mickey Mouse movie that doesn't scare you very much? Or are we in straight like weird torture horror movie category?
Yeah, no, this is full-on torture slasher film. I'm shaken a little bit by this season. I'm shaken a little bit by the tight end position. There's a lot that I've gotten wrong this year. Still trying to tread water though. So yeah, it's been spooky season so far.
Tera, give me some voice of hope. Like, everything's about to turn around. It's all going to get better. We're all going to win this week. How are we feeling?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm the perfect person for this. Just for reference, I don't watch like scary movies at all. Like, I don't even attempt. So I'm a happy person right now. No horrors. We're looking forward to a full slate of games here this week. So it's all good. We've got some good start sets and it's going to be a good week.
All right. Well, Scott Pianowski, our very own, is out on Twitter X right now handing out trick or treat. He's giving you candy. He's giving you advice you can get out there. We're going to give you advice throughout the course of the show. I've got my eyes on the YouTube chat, so you can chime in there. We'll get a bunch of those questions answered. And of course, you can use hashtag AskFFL. That's how we will get more and more information to you as we get some of the questions that you want. In the meantime, let's get to what you really want, which are some early active, inactive listings you got to know about. Travis Etienne, inactive. Tyreek Hill, glorious, active. T. Higgins, inactive. Zay Flowers, active. We'll get into some of what this all means, obviously, for the Dolphins. That's just page 1. We got a whole second page of actives, inactives, because it's that time of the year. DK Metcalf, doubtful. Jaden Daniels, game time decision. Debo and George Kittle both expected to play. Matt Harmon, how hesitant should we be with the Commanders at this point, knowing that Jaden Daniels is a game time decision?
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about it a little bit later, but the narrative juice kind of comes out of this game if we don't get Jaden Daniels and we get Marcus Mariota. But this has been a well-designed offense in Washington. I think Cliff Kingsbury has certainly exceeded my expectations, exceeded basically anybody's expectations come into this year. So I don't feel too differently. By the way, it's also not one of those teams where we're looking to start a second wide receiver. We're looking to start, a tight end, really, unless you're in a desperate spot with Zach Ertz. So the mainstay guys there, I think, will still be in lineups this weekend.
Let's get to storylines. These are your favorite storylines, big stories. What's on your mind? Tera Roberts, what's on your mind coming into week 8?
I know it feels boring, but we are going to start off with the former Super Bowl champs here and talk about the Kansas City Chiefs as if they needed more because they're just so successful already. Fantastic season. But when we look at the offense, we just needed something there with Rashee Rice being out for the season. The Chiefs have been steadfast avoiding trading for superstar receivers or signing big names in the past, and it's too late. They've had to deal with too many injuries. They actually went out and made a trade that we're kind of pumped about here. DeAndre Hopkins in Kansas City. And while technically he is a superstar of the past a little bit because he is 32 here, he's still got it okay. Last season, Hopkins was fairly productive given how much Tennessee's team was an entire disaster. Over 1,000 yards, 7 touchdowns. Not too shabby considering the situation. Perhaps there's still a little bit left in the tank here, and it's going to shine through in Kansas City. Looking at his production early this season with the Titans, it's been dreadful. He has been playing less than 50% of snaps early on here. But we do have to remember he's been dealing with an injury here. Maybe it hampered him a little bit and they were limiting him. Explains his recent snap count increase after the bye week. So maybe things are looking good and he's got his legs underneath him and the perfect opportunity here with the Chiefs. We also want to look at how this really affects Patrick Mahomes as well. I know it seems like you add somebody in and Patrick Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes because he was performing, a little bit below expectations earlier, even with Rashee Rice. But when we're looking at what Hopkins can bring to this offense in a good matchup this week against Vegas, maybe this is where we finally see the Patrick Mahomes of the past pop through. We get volume here, we get touchdowns, and we get maybe a top 5 finish from Patrick Mahomes, where he looks like the guy from a fantasy perspective that we have come to trust over the years.
Or you say he's been dealing with an injury. I'd say that's a very nice way to say Will Levis is a quarterback. All right. By the way, Eric chimes in the chat and says, Harmon and Andy B, by far the best fantasy pod duo. I'm not going to disagree with that. So Andy is half of the best pod duo. You can decide if you're Batman or Robin. Give us your favorite storyline for this week.
Yeah, realistically, I feel like Harmon's like 70% of that duo. I'm just on his coattails there. I could fake my way through a different storyline here, but I think everyone on the show knows that I am locked in on Chicago, Washington. That is a pair of shockingly successful teams this year, one of which happens to be my team. Good measuring stick game for each offense against the opposing defense here. They've suddenly become a couple of teams that are basically too big to fail in fantasy terms. Caleb has 9 touchdown passes over his last 4 games. He's averaging 263 passing yards per game during that stretch. Looks suspiciously like a guy who should have been the overall #1 pick. Nate Tice wrote a great piece on Caleb at Yahoo Sports this week. People should check it out. The team has put pretty much all possible QB responsibilities on Caleb's shoulders, and he's been stellar over the last month. It feels like there's a chance, maybe this is just me wish casting a little bit, but it feels like there's a chance this Bears-Commanders thing is going to be a big deal, not just today, but maybe for the next 3 years, 5 years, beyond. Both teams have real answers at quarterback right now. Caleb has a good shot at a top 10 positional finish this week against a less than lockdown defense, I think. And Jaden Daniels, of course, is just a set and forget quarterback when he's healthy. Already with 372 rushing yards on the year. That's ridiculous. So this game has shootout potential, game of the week potential, and it's probably going to dictate my mood for the next few days.
Rick Schneider asks in the YouTube chat, Caleb Williams, CJ Stroud, or Brock Purdy, who would you start, Andy Behrens?
Oh, don't make me do this. Who would I start if it's my team personally? I'm going Caleb this week. I think this is a really good setup for him. And again, the recent production has just been ridiculous. Am I tempted by CJ Stroud? If CJ Stroud had a full complement of receivers, I would do it. But right now, I've got Caleb actually as my QB7.
I love that we're holding feet to the fire the minute we start our storylines. All right, I'll give you, obviously, I think the storyline I think most fantasy players are salivating over right now, like full candy bars when you're going trick-or-treating, and that's the return of Tua, right? Like, think about the way the conversation has changed. Tua went from being, oh, he's not worth it, he's a bum, he needs these weapons around him. Then we see what the Dolphins look like without him. Then we see everybody get injured, as we mentioned earlier in the actives and inactives. Seeing Tyreek come back is one piece of this, but frankly, everybody's waiting with holding their breath at this point, trying to figure out exactly what it's going to mean for the Dolphins offense. They have absolutely fallen off the grid without their starting quarterback. And sure, that's what does happen to many teams that don't have greatness at the quarterback position. But it is going to be interesting because we are just as a society going to collectively hold our breath every time Tua takes a hit. I think that's pretty natural. But for all of us that are playing fantasy football and people like me that have a bunch of Dolphins on their roster, we're all hoping that this is the week suddenly the Dolphins look like the Dolphins again, and that all starts and ends with Tua. Matt Harmon, give me your top fantasy storyline for this week.
Yeah, we mentioned this. DK Metcalf not going to play this week, and I'm really curious what the Seattle offense looks like without DK Metcalf, because they have had just an obnoxious amount of passing volume so far there in Seattle. I think Geno's played really well, but they're not exactly the most efficient passing offense in the world. Tyler Lockett's the player who leads the team in first downs per route run. He's consistently been that guy that helps them move the chains. But like, what does this mean for Jackson Smith and Jigba? And we constantly talked about this on the podcast this week. If not now, when for Jackson Smith and Jigba? Because I think the 2023 first round pick for Seattle has not been bad as a pro. I think he's just been fine, in my opinion. But you want more than fine, and they're going to need more than fine if DK Metcalf is not out there, because Metcalf really, I think, changes the way you have to defend this team. He really brings the teeth to this passing attack. Like, theoretically, we should all be talking about a big bump here for JSN in this matchup, but a receiver with a sub 9.0 average depth of target like Smith and Jigba kind of needs a ton of volume to go his way. It's just been the lack of downfield targets that's really cut that margin for error completely out of the equation here. So again, it seems like we should all be pretty gassed up about JSN, a former first-round pick who, like I said, has been fine, but I think because it's only just been fine, and as a podcast listener pointed out, he's probably more like fancy Tyler Boyd than maybe Bud Light Keenan Allen, which is what maybe people hoped him to be coming into the league. I think that's kind of why there's this general vibe about the whole thing. So I'm really curious if he comes out of this one with a big prove-it game against Buffalo.
I love the concept of Bud Light Keenan Allen being something we were shooting for. Okay, let's get to some last-minute pickups. These are players that are still out there. You're all crying. Injuries. I can't put it together. There are still quality pieces out there that can be had. Tera Roberts, give us a last-minute pickup that you see out there.
I feel like everyone is overlooking Jalen Tolbert, and I get it. This offense runs aggressively, in theory, through CeeDee Lamb, and we'll talk about that later. However, Tolbert's early season numbers absolutely warrant a roster spot. His emergence in week 2, where he scored 11 fantasy points in half PPR, followed by 12 fantasy points in week 3. He's just been very solid overall. After a down game against the Giants, he had a breakout game against Pittsburgh. He showed a decent floor. He showed a bit of a ceiling there. And this is somebody who you can put into your lineup realistically and get very usable numbers here. And the key here for him has been his steady usage within the Cowboys offense, consistently on the field, even after the bye week against Detroit here, where he was on the field upwards of 90% of snaps here. We expect him to be a solid part of this Cowboys offense moving forward. This week, it is a difficult matchup here, but it's a matchup here where maybe they focus on CeeDee Lamb and try to open up some opportunities here for Jalen Tolbert. So there's opportunity here. Don't be too afraid of it because of the matchup. If you need somebody last minute to plug in, this is a viable option.
All right, stick there for a second because we got a question in the YouTube chat from Oakley Sutherland who says half PPR, need one to start. Bateman, Tolbert, or Watson? What do you think, Tera?
I do lean towards Bateman, and that was one. If he's on your list, that's another one. But Bateman is the one, just because recently he's shown a little bit more of a ceiling. You want to trust that maybe that's going to trend there. So I would lean Bateman by a smidge there.
Keep the questions coming in the YouTube chat. We're getting them in as we go. Let's go. Matt Harmon, give me a last-minute pickup that you've got your eye on.
Yeah, I was pretty surprised to see that Cedric Tillman is still sub 20% rostered in Yahoo leagues. I think it's right about 15% here on Sunday morning, because it feels like this is a guy we talked about a good bit on the waiver segment of the podcast. I know Andy talked about him as a waiver option as well. Led the team with 81 yards in last week's game against the Cincinnati Bengals. He had a 30% air yard share. And really, this is like, I don't think this is just kind of a random pop-up for Cedric Tillman. It's clear that the Browns have been trying to get Tillman on the field all the way back into training camp. The problem is that he's an X-receiver, size-wise, positional fit-wise. Like, he is an X-receiver. He was not going to take that job from Amari Cooper, and he doesn't really fit onto the field anywhere else. Now that Cooper's out of the mix, I think Tillman is going to get a nice rest of season audition as that starting X-receiver. I gave him kind of a Cortland Sutton comparison coming into the league, and with the amount of in-breakers that he ran from that X-receiver position for Cleveland last week, I do think that that fits as a pretty nice comparison. He gets a Baltimore secondary this week that was already giving up a lot of passing production and is now dealing with some cluster injuries back there. So I think Tillman could give you a wide receiver 3 performance this week and maybe be an asset for the rest of the season.
All right, Andy, give me a name you've got your eye on for last minute ad.
Yeah, it's National Tight End Day, so I want to talk about everybody's favorite fake tight end, Taysom Hill. When last we saw him, he was scoring a pair of touchdowns against Atlanta. He's eligible at tight end. Definitely doesn't play the position in any traditional sense, but he's an offensive weapon on a team that is running low on such players. Given the situation for the Saints right now at receiver and at quarterback, it's not difficult to imagine a season high in touches might be on the way for Hill. One of those games in which he's throwing a little bit, catching a little bit, taking carries at the goal line. He's facing the Chargers this week, and with Taysom Hill, he's the weird sort of quote-unquote tight end where we have to actually look at the quality of the opposing run defense. And he's facing a run defense that gives up 4.6 yards per carry. And that's mostly, again, that's what we focus on with Taysom. Almost any week in which Hill is healthy, he's going to rank as a top 10 fantasy tight end for me. It's a cheat code, yes, but you guys were begging for his tight end eligibility all summer. You got it. I'm starting him in multiple leagues this week. Tight end has been an absolute minefield all year, and Hill is at least a high upside answer.
Yeah, if you ain't cheating, you're not trying. Let's face it. I put him in today. I think the projections are staggeringly low on Taysom, and he always seems to help out. All right, let's get some make your pick in. We'll let the boys take a little breather here. Tara, we're going to look at some tough flex decisions that people have submitted to us. We'll try and fix. Oh, actually, no. It's me and Andy. All right, Andy, it's you and I. Tara gets to take a break. Let's go. Us. We're going to take a look at some flex decisions. And the first one comes from Juan. And I won't try and say Juan's last name because I don't want to butcher it. Juan, we appreciate the question. Couple of questions at tight end. Laporta or Njoku? And at flex, Kareem Hunt, Marvin Harrison Jr., or Connor. Thanks for your help. Thank you for being so nice, Juan. What do you think, Andy?
Oh, man. Why do you put me in this kind of position with Sam Laporta? That's not fair. I would start David Njoku. They're going to be throwing all day. It is, Baltimore has been a really friendly matchup all year to opposing passing games. And now all of a sudden we got no healthy corners for the Ravens. So this is going to be Njoku for me. At the flex, oh, man, so close between Kareem Hunt and James Conner. Congrats to Marvin Harrison for even making his way into this question. I think I would go Kareem Hunt in a game in which game flow, game script should really go his way. And I don't know that Kareem Hunt has looked spectacular this season necessarily, but he's hitting every hole as it's drawn up, and he's getting the yards that are there, and it is resulting quite often in touchdowns.
Yeah, for a Chiefs team that I think is motivated today to put as many points on the Raiders as possible after Christmas. Julian is our next question. Julian comes in. Tony Pollard, Rico Dowdle, Ladd McConkey, Josh Downs, or Wan'Dale Robinson, 2 flex spots. What do you think?
Yeah, I wish we had the scoring format here, because if I knew that this was full PPR, I'd feel particularly good about Wan'Dale Robinson. As it is, I'd play Tony Pollard even in a rough matchup against Detroit. He's been so good this year. He's one of the yards after contact leaders. He, to me, looks very much like old Tony Pollard, and I think we can trust him. I do not trust Rico Dowdle, so I would go Ladd McConkey here. Really difficult to trust Josh Downs with Anthony Richardson at quarterback. Again, if it's full PPR, I might go Wan'Dale over McConkey. Otherwise, it's McConkey for me.
All right, let's get this one from Alicia Woodruff, who says, which 2 running backs? Kamara, Allen, Bigsby, Mostert. We've had a lot of Bigsby questions in the chat. This will be interesting. Hashtag Ask FFL. What do you think?
Yeah, I will say the one hang up with Tank Bigsby is he needs a very particular type of game script, and I don't know that he gets it this week necessarily against Green Bay. If they fall behind, he's not often on the field. It's going to be like the Dearness Johnson show. But I think I would still play him here because the other guys are very much secondary backs in their offenses. So I would go Bigsby, and of course I'm going Alvin Kamara.
Let's get one in here from Sean. This is a 2-parter. So for Sean, we'll start with the quarterback portion of it. He asked, quarterback start sit, Mahomes or Tua? And then half-point PPR, wide receiver 2, need 1. Worthy, McMillan, Rome, and Ridley. Let me start with the quarterback portion of this. Mahomes or Tua?
Yeah, well, you mentioned it, Fitz, and we haven't really gotten into it yet on this show, but we're in Patrick Mahomes' revenge week against the Raiders, right? We had that weird offseason episode with the frog puppet, and Mahomes said he was going to handle it when it was time to handle it, and this week it's time to handle business. So I think the Chiefs are going to keep the pedal to the floor basically all afternoon, and I think we're going to see a big number. And we get DeAndre Hopkins, so I'm gonna go Mahomes here over Tua in his comeback game. And then as to the other question, I'm probably going to go Xavier Worthy for the same reason. I mean, what a weapon to unveil against the Raiders in a week in which you're really trying to hang a big number on them.
I talked to a player at the Super Bowl that said, knew my Raiders fandom, and he said, hey, man, we are not going to forget Christmas Day. The last time the Chiefs lost was to the Raiders. They didn't like that the way that was celebrated. It's going to get ugly. If you got a Chiefs, start him. I don't care, the water boy. Just start him at this point. They're going to try and do everything they can. All right, Matt, Tara, why don't you give us some numbers that lie?
Yeah, coming off a narrative street there with Andy and Fitz. Let's get into real, the stats, the numbers. Fantasy football, it's a football game, but it's also a numbers game, Tara. But sometimes these numbers lie to us. So what's a number out there, Tara, that you think is lying to the people?
Oh, I've got a fun one to start off with, Matt. And I'm having a mid-show realization here that I'm coming off as a Cowboys apologist. I talked about Jalen Tolbert, and now I'm going to talk about Dak Prescott. And this is not the last Cowboy that I'm going to talk about here. But Dak Prescott, QB 20. That number lies. He's currently QB 20 overall, QB 17 in average points per game. And while, yes, this is his factual ranking here, it is really exaggerating Dak's overall performance. I feel like sometimes we look at the Cowboys from such a negative light, and we're ignoring here that the Cowboys' strength of schedule before the bye week was absolutely brutal. No easy matchups. They started off the season against Cleveland, followed by a healthy New Orleans squad. Baltimore defense that is more pass-friendly, and that was the week that Dak did finish as the overall QB2 in a game that he should have. Then against the Giants, been a decently strong defense this season. Pittsburgh, Detroit, it's been really, really ugly. Again, aside from that, these difficult matchups early here overall, he has actually finished around a borderline QB1 every single week. So it really hasn't been that bad. The schedule has made it worse than it is. It looks worse than it is. He's performed decently well, all things considered here. And this week is not a cakewalk here, but they are coming off the bye week. We do have to remember last year's surge when they came off the bye week. Mike McCarthy had put some fine tuning into things, fixed the offense, and they came out guns blazing. I am hoping that happens here. I expect this to be a solid performance for Dak Prescott, where he will not perform anywhere near QB 20 or QB 17 here, and will have at the very least a borderline QB 1 week here. He's better than QB 20.
Hey, you're right. They were kind of dragging their feet in the early part of last season and then really kicked things into gear right around this time. I think Cowboys fans have to be hoping that that's the case. And, they can shut up their former quarterback calling out the routes with Troy Aikman. Shut up their own owner talking about the head coaches designing bad plays. What a wild time in Dallas. Kind of their backs are against the wall here. I'll talk about a number that's lying to people right now. Javonte Williams is running back 31 in fantasy points per game. I do not think that is indicative of how the rest of the season is going to play out for Javonte Williams. It's kind of like a forgettable running back 3. Williams is really starting to play better than that. Last week, he had the second best success rate among running backs with 10 plus carries, and he was tied with Aaron Jones for 4th in percentage of carries to go for 10 plus yards at 21.4%. He has really been heating up as a runner, and I think the Broncos run game overall has not only looked better with him as the clear lead back, but also they've gotten healthier in the offensive line. Mike McGlinchey's back. The interior is playing extremely well. Also, I think people don't realize this, that Williams is 3rd among all running backs in targets this year. He's not necessarily going to crack like the running back 1 ranks on a weekly basis, especially against tougher defenses, and those will come. But this is overall a solid fantasy profile. And with a matchup today against the Panthers on deck, I think this is the week to ignore that running back 31 ranking and throw him into your lineups.
Yeah, I agree with that there. And I'm somebody who has not been very much pro Javonte Williams, but he looks different, clear RB1, excelling in good matchups here. So I'm with you on that one. I think the numbers are lying there on Javonte. I've got one more that I can do here, and it's going to be a long one here. It's the New York Jets fantasy points allowed. 7th fewest, 2 wide receivers. 4th fewest, 2 quarterbacks. 10th fewest, 2 running backs. 9th fewest, 2 tight ends. Overall, they have been excellent. I hate to pick on the Jets. Okay, I might be kidding on that. I do kind of take deep pleasure in picking on the Jets right now. I have my reasons, but the numbers here, they are kind of lying, unfortunately. Let's look at the stats here. I mean, again, these are strong overall numbers. They look like an elite defense when you look at the numbers, but since Robert Saleh's exit, the defense has really not been the same here. Injuries have certainly played a part in that. They've struggled without Hassan Reddick as well, and his return could help. But again, early on in the season when they were performing, Hassan Reddick wasn't there. The issue has really just surfaced over these past few weeks. And while it maybe hasn't shown up drastically in their overall numbers, it is very clear when you look at the fantasy points here. Looking at the last 2 weeks, they've allowed strong performances to both Josh Allen and Russell Wilson in his debut there, each with 3 total touchdowns. This is a stark difference from overall in the early season where they were limiting quarterbacks like Brock Purdy and Sam Darnold to far less. Their run defense has also been a clear issue. Dominated by Najee Harris last week. Again, dominated by Ray Davis the week before. The trends are very concerning here. This week they face New England, and from a fantasy perspective, unless we're in Superflex and Desperate, we're not really leaning here, but Drake May has looked a lot better. He's looked very solid early on this season. Last week, he was without Demario Douglas. This week, we get Ramondre Stevenson active and ready to go as well. So do not be surprised here if there are some prize fantasy assets here that put up decent numbers. Watch this game closely because this is going to be very relevant for us in the weeks moving forward.
Absolutely. Drake May looks like a potential quarterback solution if you missed on Anthony Richardson or someone like that. So I like this call out from Tera. Let's bring the whole gang back in. We'll talk about the 49ers and your Cowboys, Tera. We get to talk more Cowboys here.
Let's turn to our fantasy game changers for this week, powered by Ram Trucks. We identify some of the most impactful players in one of the top fantasy matchups on the schedule. And yeah, Cowboys 49ers Sunday night football. Not quite the way everybody thought it was going to look when we thought about this game in the preseason. The Cowboys sitting at 3-3, taking on the 49ers at 3-4. Going to be a beautiful, balmy 69 nice degrees tonight at Levi Stadium. 49ers favored by 5.5. Over on this one is 47. So fantasy game changer Andy Behrens to you is...
Oh, it's got to be Jordan Mason. We might be coming into the final full workload game of Jordan Mason's season with Christian McCaffrey, at least a possibility to return after the bye if Kyle Shanahan can be believed, which he can't because he's been lying to us all year. But if this is it for Mason, I think he's going to go out with a monster game. He's been incredible in the first half. He's averaged 5.2 yards per carry, nearly 110 scrimmage yards per game. He's among the leaders in yards after contact per attempt, also has the most runs of 10 or more yards and the second most missed tackles on his rush attempts. This week, he just gets a gift of a matchup against a Dallas defense that really we've been picking on him all season. I feel like we talk about him in basically every show as an opportunity to, get a big week from your running back. The Cowboys rank 28th against the run. They give up over 140 rushing yards per game, 10 rushing touchdowns on the season. The likeliest game plan for the Niners this week, given the injuries in the receiving room, is to simply run all over a defense that has not yet stopped a good running back this year. So I'm expecting one of those, 20-plus carry, 100-yard, multi-touchdown performances from Mason. Hopefully, we don't get vultured by Brock Purdy this week.
Matt, what do you think when I say fantasy game changers?
Yeah, so when you say fantasy game changers, I would say fantasy game changers, ? Maybe? What's left of the 49ers wide receiver room? I mean, not having Brandon Ayuk is such a bummer rest of the way. It sounds like we're going to get Deebo Samuel back in this game. If you look at the splits, when Brandon Ayuk is not on the field, Deebo Samuel typically goes crazy out there for fantasy football. But how healthy is he? That is an outstanding question. But seriously, I mean, a guy like Deebo Samuel should absolutely destroy this hapless Cowboys defense. But what about the rest of the guys in there? No Juwan Jennings. Is this the moment for Ricky Pearsall? I was a big fan. Fitz, you know this because we did the draft show together. I was a big fan of Ricky Pearsall, and I understood why they made that pick. But first game for Pearsall didn't necessarily go so well, but I'm willing to give him grace. The guy got shot back in August. So I feel like we're going to get a big performance out of Deebo if he's 100%. But if he's not, this has got to be Pearsall's moment to step up. I'm overall confident in the player, really like him as a college prospect, but just how ready is he to contribute? So for me, it's more fantasy game changers ? As opposed to like a real statement here.
Let me stick you there for a second, Harmon, because I got a follow-up. Matthew McNeese in the YouTube chat comes in and says, stress meter level high with an exclamation point. I feel bad for the guy. Says, start Deebo, Dobbs, Bigsby, last-minute flex spot. Need one, make or break. What do you think?
I mean, brother, I don't know. Like Deebo Samuel, he would be the correct answer here, but I don't know how healthy this guy is. So listen, Matthew, if you're already stressed, maybe you don't want to be stressing all day to then find out, Deebo Samuel only played 5 snaps in this game or something like that. But then again, man, how stressed are you going to be if you don't put Deebo Samuel in your lineup and you're watching Sunday Night Football and he's dropping like 2 touchdowns, one through the air, one through the ground on the Dallas Cowboys, again, pitiful defense. So if I was you, Matthew to Matthew here, I'm going to risk it and I'm going to play Deebo Samuel. That is my advice to you. But I mean, I do not know. Good luck.
But you just gotta understand, like this is like going to your doctor and being like, "What's wrong?" He's like, I'm not sure.
I want my doctor to be truthful and honest with me. I don't want my doctor to come in and give me some like false hope if something's really wrong. Like, yeah, your knee's gonna fall off in a couple of weeks, pal. But let me sugarcoat it. No, I want to know. I want honesty. So I'm giving the people honesty here, Fitz.
Yeah, I'm soft. Tara, we've had too much 49ers talk. As usual, I need you to save us all and remind us that there are two teams playing in this game. When I say fantasy game changer, you say?
I do this every single week. And it's not intentional here. I am carrying the torch here for Dallas. Did I expect the 2024 season to be perfect for the Dallas offense? No, but I did expect CeeDee Lamb to be consistently better than what it has been early on this season. The results haven't just been where we want them to be in general, and even in games where he's gotten target volume, he hasn't been particularly efficient with it, and this lack of efficiency, the limited yardage, the touchdowns issue, it's really just been draining on him. Last season with CeeDee Lamb, success for him was built on volume. He had a whopping 135 receptions, often with targets well over 10 per game, giving him tremendous upside, making him one of the most reliable receivers in the NFL. Last year, we know exactly what happened after the bye week. That was the turning point for Dallas. Mike McCarthy got in there. He got into the kitchen. He started cooking, and he fixed everything here. I expect there to be another pivotal shift here for the offense coming off of this bye week, and they start consistently turning to him in the red zone and providing those high volume opportunities. I admit that it feels weird to say that I trust Mike McCarthy, especially as a Packers fan, but he has done a solid job in terms of recognizing their weaknesses and making adjustments. So this is the reset here. This is the moment that it happens. We are getting CeeDee Lamb game changer this week, finally.
All right, we're running late, but I know the first half ran long, but we're going to call that commercial interruption. We're still going to get hurry up offense in. Let's get some questions answered. You guys have been throwing them out there. It's chaos, dogs and cats living together. First question comes from Joe Stone, says, #AskFFL, Taylor, McLaurin, or Samuel need two. Thanks, Matt. What do you think?
Well, this situation, I mean, you got better options than Matthew. No disrespect to the YouTube commenter there, but you got some better options here. I feel like I actually probably just play Jonathan Taylor and Terry McLaurin because these are two high ceiling options, and maybe not take that risk with Deebo Samuel. As long as you have the fortitude to withstand if he goes off on Sunday Night Football, that's what I do.
All right, Jeff comes in with the next question for Andy Behrens, says, Ask FFL, Mason, Hunt, HM. One goes RB2, the other to flex PR.
Yeah, for me, Jordan Mason is going to be your RB2. I think he can finish as the overall #1 fantasy running back this week. It's just a great setup for him against Dallas. And my #2, man, you can't really go wrong here. I'm going to go Achane. I think he's one of the quiet beneficiaries from Tua coming back as well. That offense is really going to hum, and he's got a great matchup.
Next question comes from Jeff, spelled like he's really smart. Jeff North, Alvin Kamara or Javonte Williams in a PPR league. Tara, what do you think?
We had some wonderful talk about Javonte Williams, but I am still trusting Alvin Kamara. My heart can't sit Alvin Kamara for Javonte Williams. Again, we get Chris Olave back this week, so maybe this offense is going to flow a little bit better. Receptions will still be there for Alvin Kamara, so that's the direction I would head here.
Next question comes in from Miguel Vasquez, who says, start Purdy or Tua? Harmon, what do you think?
Oh yeah, let me puff my chest out and say it with certainty here, Fitz. No indecision here. I would start Tua because he's got all of his guys out there. Tyreek, Waddle, he's back. He's ready to roll against the Cardinals. Defense is not very good, so full confidence, Tua.
All right, let's get one in from YouTube here, where Quentin Green has asked, need at flex, Mooney, Flowers, or Chubb? Andy, what do you think?
Oh, this is a tough one. Of course, in a normal week, I would say Zay Flowers, but we know he's dealing with an ankle injury. It seems like he's going to play. Is he going to play his full complement of snaps? I don't know. So I'd veer away from him. I'd probably go Nick Chubb. It's not a great matchup, but I do think workload is going to get there. And, we know that they love Nick Chubb at the goal line if they happen to get to the goal line.
You guys are talking about Tua. We're talking about Tua. Everybody's talking about Tua. In fact, on Football 301, they had a smart conversation about Tua and what it should mean with the matchup specific to this week. Check a little of that conversation out.
They need a little bit of mouthwash, but I want to see if the Cardinals are like, no, we're going to keep this momentum going for the rest of the season.
Yeah, my one take on that game is if if like Tua's back, if they don't come back to life to like a big degree, it's red. Like you got to hit the red alert button.
Oh yeah,
they should, like, personnel wise, like they should torch this defense.
They should. And if it's a struggle or a slog, and I get it's Tua's first game back, but you got paid. I drop excuses once you get paid. That's kind of what I thought, and so I, want to see him. It's not, and I want to see him in this offense again, because again, the offense has just been, okay, they can still run the ball. No, they can't. Like that's been gone. That's went away the last few weeks. There's been signs, but it's not.
This goes back to last season too,
starting like November-ish. Yeah, I know. So it's a continued thing. So I want to see if they adjust and see if, you still have a shot in the AFC, still open.
One of the biggest matchups of the weekend. We talked a little about it. It's time to break down even more of Bears Commanders. Absolutely incredible matchup for what we all think is going to be two quarterbacks facing each other for the next generation. The Bears 4-2, the Commanders 5-2. Going to be in Landover 59 on this one. Huge line movement. Daniels went for Bears as a 2.5 favorite to the Commanders, being a 1-point favorite. The total on this one's 46. All of this comes from Jayden Daniels. We're getting a ton of questions about Jayden Daniels. Everybody in the chat's blowing it up. So, Matt, when you talk about this quarterback situation, what's it look like?
Yeah, it does sound like we're going to get Jayden Daniels in this game, which is great. Obviously, he's been one of the best picks you could make in fantasy this year. I feel like he probably comes out of my, maybe top 5 ranked quarterbacks, but still probably a quarterback 1. Maybe somebody I'd use like a Kirk Cousins over him. But at the end of the day, I still feel pretty good about Daniels. I also think it's worth noting that it's gone a little under discussed in the whole, like, will Jayden Daniels play? Will he not play? That Marcus Mariota was really good in relief duty last week. Yeah, it was against the Panthers. All caveats applied. That was a defense that wasn't going to be good and then now has been banged up. But Mariota, the Commanders, dog walked that Panthers defense all afternoon. His 132.8 passer rating was the 8th best mark of his career. It was actually his 2nd best since we turned the calendars to 2020. So that is a nice little bit of validation for Cliff Kingsbury, for the entire offensive ecosystem here. So even if we get a banged up Jayden Daniels, or if Marcus Mariota has to play some snaps here, I still feel pretty good about the mainstay players in this Washington offense.
Tara, what do you got your eye on this game?
Let's go to Jayden Daniels' number 1 guy, Terry McLaurin. And can he stay strong in this tough matchup? As a longtime Terry McLaurin dynasty manager, it has been a tough ride for us, but the arrival of Jayden Daniels and Cliff Kingsbury has been magical. A miraculous turn of events, everything that we could have hoped for here with him. He's gone from a questionable flex to a guy that we're thrilled to roster, a weekly start here. Again, after a couple of, tough games to start the season here, everything started really clicking for him. McLaurin has finished outside of the top 20 at receiver just once this season recently in week 5 against Cleveland. Very understandable here. And he still had a very strong game, over 100 receiving yards here. It feels like things are truly different for him this season, but this is the toughest matchup that he will have faced thus far this season. The Bears defense is very formidable, particularly against the pass here. They have shut down top receivers, even like starting rookie Brian Thomas here. So we're really looking to Terry McLaurin to rise to the occasion here. And can we trust him this week? I feel like we can still trust him. He's a trained receiver in this offense here with this quarterback. We expect more of Terry McLaurin this week.
Adam on the YouTube chat comes in and says, Bigsby or McLaurin half PPR. Tara, what do you think?
I still lean towards McLaurin. We talked about Bigsby and the risk that he poses in terms of game script earlier. So unfortunately, if these Packers get up on them and the Jags are playing from behind, doesn't sound like it's going to be a good situation here for Tank Bigsby. So we go with McLaurin there.
All right. So when you look at this game, to me, we keep talking about quarterback v quarterback, and we forget that this game's really going to be decided by the defenses. Tara just mentioned some good stats on the Bears and why that defense is actually pretty good. The Commanders' defense is mid all the way around. They're in the middle of the pack in the league when it comes to passing yardage allowed, rushing yardage allowed. The Commanders' defense is just middle of the pack in everything they do. Now, that's been masked because their offense has been able to do so much. But realistically, when you start talking about these quarterbacks, I think you have to have some context to the defenses they're taking on. The Bears' defense is going to be a much tougher matchup for whoever is a quarterback from the Commanders than vice versa. So for me, I'm looking at everything from the Bears side of this and saying there's going to be an opportunity to eat. There's going to be an opportunity here for Caleb to eat. There's going to be an opportunity for those weapons to eat. I really like the Bears offensively against the Commanders defense that we're suddenly forgetting for some reason isn't very good, which leads me, Andy, to your thought on this game.
Yeah, I'm going to continue celebrating National Tight End Day, and I will mention that it may have escaped people's attention that Cole Kmet is the overall tight end 4 on the season right now. He's tight end 3 in per game scoring. Of course, that's also, it's really an indictment of the position, right? And it's also a compliment to Kmet. But he's been awesome. A bigger than expected piece for Caleb Williams and the Bears offense. Over Kmet's last 4 games, he's seen 23 targets and he scored 3 touchdowns. He's also tied for the 3rd most targets at his position inside the 10-yard line. So he's a go-to option for Chicago in the most valuable area of the field. At a position that just has not given us very many right answers this year, Kmet has actually emerged as a bankable option. He's seeing volume each week, and the Bears offense is actually rolling. Chicago has scored 95 points over the last 3 games, so we're not talking about some, middle of the pack offense here. Kmet has definitely entered the circle of fantasy trust for me.
Speaking of entering the chat, maybe emerging, if we want to use that word, I don't know, however we want to do this. It's time for our primetime picks, where every week we pick a flex spot from 3 different games. You know the drill. We let you know how the standings are going, and what do you know? Golly gee, how's that look right there? Huh. From first to worst to tied for first again. Oh, glory, I am back. I don't know why I became a Southern gentleman right there. Glory, I am back. Yeah, I won last week. I won last week in a big, big way. I think there's going to be a ban on me being allowed to draft Derrick Henry anymore. Harmon, how's it feel having you're in 3rd place because, to be very clear, I've scored more points than you. Just go and keep that right up there. The total points, the 2nd column clearly shows that, Matt Harmon, right now, you are looking at my smoke. How's that feel?
Congratulations. You sucked so bad at this game that you got to pick Derrick Henry 3 weeks in a row, and it finally worked out for you. I'm really impressed with your football brain over there.
If only I knew you were going to come with that argument. I should have asked producer Dan to clip week 1 when you were like, "Oh, it's such a disadvantage when you pick first overall. How can you ever win that way?"
Yeah, it wasn't working out for you for a while. I said it finally worked out for you. So yeah, 3 times in a row, maybe it's an advantage.
Well, Andy Behrens, for a reason that makes no mathematical sense, is in last place. And our games this week: Buffalo versus Seattle, Dallas versus San Francisco, and the Giants versus Pittsburgh. Yeah, the points don't tell the whole story here. I'll take my victory lap now while I still can. But Andy Behrens, you get the first pick from our 3 games, and I'm just going to be honest. This is going to be an interesting process. There ain't a lot out there on this. Let's go, Andy. What do you got?
Well, great strategy by me, first of all, last week to tank for Jordan Mason this week. That's just chess versus checkers in this thing. He's one of only 2 players that I think I want in the San Francisco-Dallas game. Mason has had a monster half season, obviously. He gets a user-friendly Cowboys run D in this one. We already talked about that. So, again, I think he can be the overall RB1 on the week.
Nice. All right, Matt, what do you got?
Yeah, I'm going to take Kenneth Walker here. Walker has been balling out this season, super explosive. They've also gotten him involved in the receiving game. Buffalo defense on the other side that can be run on. So, yeah, give me Kenneth Walker here.
All right, I'm going to keep the running back trend going just because that seems to work for me sometimes, and I want something that's reliable. I don't love a lot of my options with Seattle's injuries or with Buffalo's offense in general, but I'll take James Cook. I'll take Cook and hope that a running back manages to get me a little bit of traction there. Tera, as I've been saying almost every week of the season, Tera picks last because she's been in first place the whole time. What do you got?
Yeah, let's keep that going here. I would be the biggest hypocrite in the world if, after all that I've said today, I didn't take CeeDee Lamb here. So let's go, CeeDee Lamb. We talked about my reasoning, post-week, bye-week bump. I'm feeling confident. There we go. With my second pick here, I'm not so confident. I'm feeling a little bit nervous on this one. We mentioned that this is kind of a weird little slate right here. I'm going to take George Pickens. Need a big performance from him. I don't know how much I trust what we saw out of Russell Wilson and that it'll carry over this week. But, you know, we saw Russ last year with Courtland Sutton, so he can be this year's Courtland Sutton for him. The touchdowns will come, yardage will be there. So I need another big week here from George Pickens.
I feel like this game's already spiraling out of control for me this week, and I have no confidence in anything. But with San Francisco not knowing what the situation is going to be for Debo, I'll take George Kittle here, and I'll just hope that all of the targets and all of the land to go to George Kittle, and he's maybe the only option that's actually healthy for him, and maybe he scores 17 touchdowns for me. Matt, what do you got?
Yeah, do not like what I saw out of the Giants offense last weekend, particularly Daniel Jones playing under pressure. But nevertheless, I'll take Malik Neighbors here as the guy who only needs one play to make this selection work out. So crossing my fingers that Daniel Jones can stay upright against a scary Pittsburgh front and get the ball to his most dynamic playmaker.
All right, that means, Andy, you've got 2 straight picks for us. What's your first one?
Yeah, give me Najee Harris. He's coming off back-to-back 100-yard games, facing a Giants defense that ranks near the bottom of the league against the run, allows 5.4 yards per carry, so very generous defense. Give me Najee. And then number 2, I'm gonna go Amari Cooper. And this was close for me, but he has a game under his belt with Josh Allen. Caught a touchdown pass in his Bills debut. Gets a neutral matchup here. I'm tempted a little bit by JSN, but I like the scoring chances for Cooper just a little bit better.
All right, in the YouTube chat, Ripman asked Pickens versus Cooper. They've both already been taken. Andy, what do you think?
Yeah, I would have taken them in the order that they were selected in primetime picks. I like Pickens a little bit better in this one. It's close. I think Amari Cooper was exactly what the Bills needed, and as we get deeper into the second half of the season, I think we're really going to see some huge weeks. But right now, hard not to like what you saw from Russell Wilson a week ago. So I'd lean Pickens here.
All right, next up is Matt Harmon. What do you got?
Okay, I have a written statement here from my lawyers. Just want to get this out there that our client, Matthew Harmon, that's me, agrees to take Deebo Samuel at the 10th overall pick in primetime picks with the understanding that if Deebo Samuel does not play, our client, Matthew Harmon, will be awarded Ricky Pearsall in emergency backup protocols, typical to what we do with running backs. However, if Deebo Samuel plays and only plays 5 snaps because he's got like the whole pneumonia thing going on, respiratory illness. If that happens, our client, Matthew Harmon, which is me, will accept full responsibility. So with that, I will take Deebo Samuel 10th overall.
Okay, nothing says full responsibility like a statement from your attorney.
The minute Deebo plays 1 snap, that's where you are. Okay, just so we're clear. Okay, it was very complicated, but we'll give it to you out of pity mostly. All right, speaking of pity, I've got to take somebody from the Monday night game, and this is all trash. I'll take Devin Singletary, and I'll just pray. That's all. I got nothing. I'll just take Devin Singletary, and I'll just hope that the football gods shine on me and thank me for picking Devin Singletary. Man, I feel bad about the way this draft went for me. Tera, give us all some hope. Screw this thing up big.
If you feel bad, it means it's probably going to go right for you. I'm feeling not so bad about taking Jackson Smith and Jigba this week, but I'm a little bit concerned because, as Matt talked about, we did talk earlier on this pod about, what can we really expect, because we expect the opportunities to be there, but he has been underwhelming. This is the breakout opportunity. If he can perform with DK Metcalf off, the jury's still out here, but I need to take a leap of faith here and hope that this is the breakout performance for JSN here.
We have a question here on JSN from Headley, who says, keep JSN or get Tillman off the wire, PPR. What do you think, Tera?
Well, I liked what we saw out of Tillman last week, but it's one game here. I don't know if I can make that leap over JSN there, so I'm keeping JSN, and we just got to give it a little bit of time here with Tillman.
Every time I hear the name Headley, it just makes me think of Blazing Saddles. Go watch it, kids. All right, Andy, Matt, fantasy face-off with Rashad Baitman. Why don't you give us some analysis here?
Oh, man, what a treat to discuss a longtime Matt Harmon favorite in fantasy face-off this week. We are talking Rashad Baitman. Man, I feel like your whole career is built to this moment. He's coming off a monster game, 121 yards, 1 score. His quarterback is dealing right now. Looks like the MVP again. Zay Flowers has an ankle issue, which could mean additional work for Baitman. The volume hasn't necessarily been there to this point. He doesn't have more than 4 catches in any game, but the offense is so effective that it hardly matters. So we're going to try to put a finer point on the Baitman enthusiasm. Let's talk Baitman versus DeAndre Hopkins. He might be the #1 receiver for the Chiefs this week, despite the fact that he just arrived.
Yeah, nothing like being able to say, man, who's a better fantasy play, Rashad Bateman or a guy that might be a future Hall of Famer? I've never felt more alive, Andy Behrens, in this. But to prove that I am not a compromised source, I'm actually going to go with DeAndre Hopkins in this one. I know he just got to Kansas City, but I loved Andy Reid coming out and saying, hey, this guy who might get some reps in the Juju / Rashee Rice positions, might operate in some of those same areas. Talked about his feel for zone coverage. That is still very much present in DeAndre Hopkins' game. So I could definitely see him, potentially leading that wide receiver room in targets this week against a Raiders team that we know he wants to beat up on there in Patrick Mahomes. So yeah, I'll go with Hopkins over my guy Bateman here.
Yeah, I think that's the right call. It's close, and normally I wouldn't necessarily trust a receiver who's like 4 games into his career with a team, or 4 days into his career with a team. But man, this is somebody who should be able to lock in pretty quickly. And again, the role that they've set out for him, relatively simple, and it's something in which I think he can thrive. So I agree with you there. How about Michael Pittman? He didn't even practice on Friday. He's tied to basically the least accurate passer in the game, but he is obviously a very good player, and he's also one of your guys. So Pittman versus Bateman.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm going to go with the guy tethered to the player who won the MVP last year, might be the favorite to win the MVP this year, as opposed to a guy who can't complete more than 50% of his passes. Yeah, I know the target projection probably looks better for Michael Pittman. The catch projection might look better for Michael Pittman. But at this point, like, Bateman is playing extremely well. He's a critical role in this offense. So I think I'm going to go with Bateman here over Michael Pittman. It's a crowded room there in Indy, and it's not as if, Anthony Richardson has shown he can even support one wide receiver at this point.
It's funny that you mentioned the in-game projection for Michael Pittman, because I've benched him in a couple places, and that stupid in-game projection is just screaming at me that I'm making a bad call. But man, I wanna see it one time with Josh Downs and Michael Pittman and Anthony Richardson before I keep going back to it. So I'm with you on the Bateman call there. How about one last one, Christian Kirk? He's a trade candidate in reality. He's coming off a 1-catch game. Hasn't really been particularly helpful in recent weeks, but he does have some notable performances on the resume this season.
Yeah, this one's the clear and obvious win for Rashad Bateman here, because I think you could argue that, yeah, Bateman doesn't have a great floor because the targets aren't always going to be there on a weekly basis. Run-heavy team, Zay Flowers is, even if he's banged up, probably still the guy that's going to catch the most passes in this one. Mark Andrews is starting to come alive. So you'd argue, yeah, the floor isn't there for Bateman. But you just said it, Andy. Christian Kirk had 1 catch in the last game. He's clearly been usurped as the top receiver by Brian Thomas Jr. is just so much better. So again, am I going to tether myself to the low floor, high ceiling player in the Baltimore Ravens offense, or the low floor, maybe high-ish ceiling player in the Jacksonville Jaguars offense? Clear win for Rashad Bateman here.
Yeah, I fully agree with you there. I'm not even sure where people find the courage to start Christian Kirk at this stage of the season. That's an easy one for me. Let's send it back to Fitz and Tera.
All right, Tera, it is time to lock it in. A couple players you got your eye on this weekend. You're ready to lock in. Give me a name that's on your mind.
I'm ready to lock it in with Rashad White. We talked about him on the pod this week in terms of which one of these Bucs receivers might step up with Chris Godwin out for the year and Mike Evans sidelined, but we could actually see targets increase to the running backs here. We've got this 3-headed quote-unquote monster here in the backfield, and they're actually one of the more reliable receiving groups of the receiving backs in the league here. All 3 have had excellent hands, strong after the catch, and with all of them active and healthy last week, the Bucs showed that their preference here really is Rashad White. Atlanta's defense has been somewhat underwhelming considering their offseason investments, but if there's one area where they have been solid, it has been against running backs, allowing the 5th fewest fantasy points to the position. That includes a Week 5 game where he had just 8 fantasy points against Atlanta there for White. His groundwork was fine, but he lacked receptions, so this is the perfect opportunity for him to be able to capitalize on increased receptions with the receivers down, giving him strong RB1 upside this week. I know sometimes people feel a little uncomfortable with it, but he is still very much in play this week.
That is not the only running back in the NFC South that you like. Give me another one.
Yes, I didn't realize, again, we're sticking here with the NFC South. The confidence in Alvin Kamara, point blank, I think I said it earlier, there is no scenario where I am sitting him, even after a disastrous Week 7. And I get it. Spencer Rattler at quarterback, it feels hesitant to start him in a tough matchup. a difficult defense, plus quarterback limited experience. It's typically a recipe for disaster. But the good news here is that Rattler is still dumping the ball off to Alvin Kamara. So we're still going to get the receptions here, where Kamara used to average a little bit more yards. It's been down a bit here. So again, we're expecting receptions to be here. We just need Kamara to pick up yardage a tiny bit. This week's matchup is against the LA Chargers, a defense that has been solid against the run all season. But again, they showed a little bit of vulnerability last week to James Conner, so talent can break through. Alvin Kamara is absolutely talented here. We're still rolling with him, even in this difficult matchup here.
All right, let's bring everybody back together for some hurry-up offense. This is where you guys submit some questions. We put 25 seconds on the clock. We get them answered. Important update. Headley has said she's been hearing the Blazing Saddles reference her whole life, or his life. I don't know. But either way, I'm just glad the Blazing Saddles reference hit. Mr. Ramon says, best fantasy show. Keep it up. Need help. Non-PPR league. Pick 2 between Bijan, Hunt, Mason, and DeAndre Swift. Because I've taken so much time, I'll give this to Harmon because it makes him mad.
Yeah, we're going to go with Bijan Robinson. We're going to go with Jordan Mason. And thank you for saying we're the best show. That's the way to get your question on the show, is to compliment us.
Now, that is fact. We are very insecure here. All right. Rich McElhaney, I cannot confirm related to Rob, but I hope for his sake he is. Half-point PPR, sit 1. Garrett Wilson, DJ Moore, Drake London, George Pickens, Ask FFL. I'll ask Andy Behrens.
Man, good options here. Like them all. I'm definitely starting DJ Moore against Washington. I don't know how you can sit Drake London at this point. He's like a touchdown and 70 or 80 yards every week. And I'm going to play Pickens as well. Again, have to like what you saw from him with Russell Wilson.
All right. Bible Backdrop says Javonte Williams, Brock Bowers, yes. Brian Thomas Jr., PPR League. Ask FFL. You weren't asking me. You're asking Tara. I just cheered for Brock Bowers. What do you got there?
I'll cheer for it too. I'm not opposed to a tight end in a flex spot every now and then, and Brock Bowers is one of those guys. But that said, we talked about Javonte. There is upside here. He's been fantastic, and it is a really good matchup here. So roll with the running back. Go with Javonte.
I don't know how I feel about that at all. All right, Soldier Boy.
Who's Bible
Burrow or
Backdrop's
Love?
tight end 1 in this scenario?
That's a good question. Burrow or Love? My opponent has Jamar, Waddle, Pollard, or Worthy. Half PPR league. What do you think, Andy?
Man, I think that's a lot of questions here for this particular segment. This is a tough one to do in 25 seconds. I'm going to go Jordan Love. He can be the QB1 this week. And then give me Waddle.
I love that. Mahomes or Goff? PPR. What do you think, Matt Harmon? Look at me giving you 20 seconds to answer.
Well, I mean, you've got Goff's reception bonus potential here. We've seen him catch passes. No, but on a serious note, I do actually think the answer is Jared Goff. It's a tougher defensive matchup there with the Tennessee Titans, and I know we've talked about the narrative aspect with Mahomes here, but I just trust what's going on in Detroit so much right now.
All right, we're going to get one in from the YouTube chat, and it comes from Mindy Hoke, who says, love you guys so much. Thank you for the advice. Thank you so much. I have 2 questions for you. Ramondre or Chubb, and McBride or Otten? What do you think, Tara?
Well, I do like Chubb, and maybe this offense gets a little bit more of an uptick with Jameis. I would still go with Ramondre. I don't dislike this matchup. Talked about it earlier. And then for McBride versus Otten, we're sticking with McBride here. Kyler's been looking a little bit better, so we're going to lean with McBride.
All right, the next one comes from Jose on YouTube, who says, need 2 PPR, Ingram, Allen, Dobbs, Smith, and Jigba. What do you think, Harmon?
Oh, God. Ingram, Allen, Dobbs, and Smith and Jigba. PPR, I think JSN might actually be a pretty good option here. I assume Ingram is Evan Ingram. I don't know. Tight ends?
Yes,
in the flex?
Ingram. Yes, Ingram, yes.
I'm not so sure about that. So, yeah, give me JSN as PPR scam here.
All right, the next one comes from Mason, who says, Baitman, Flowers, or Waddle. Need 1 in wide receiver and 1 in flex, Andy. So you got Bateman, Flowers, Waddle.
It's a little bit risky, and I wouldn't do this in a normal week, but I think the guy that I'm sitting here is going to be Zay Flowers. Again, we saw very little from him after he suffered the ankle injury last week. Not a big participant in practice this week. We think he's going to go, but I would rather have Bateman.
All right, the next question comes in from Phildo. This is a long question. Phildo says 16-team PPR, 1 running back, 2 wide receiver, 1 tight end, 2 flex. My league mate had a stroke, and I'm managing his team until he's better. Do I play Najee in the second flex or Keenan Allen? I like Harris's matchup, but Allen can have a big game versus Washington defense. First and foremost, we hope your friends get better, and thank you so much for helping them out and listening to the show. Now we'll try and answer that question that I've blown through the clock on. So we'll give this to Matt Harmon. What do you think? You can just take your time. Look, when you're managing a team for your friend who has a stroke, like, we just blow up the clock for this one, Harmon. Take your time. Let's help Phil out.
Forget the clock. All right, well, in that case, let me go through my full tabulations here. No, honestly, I think Najee Harris is probably the correct option. Like the matchup, the Giants' run defense is not an intimidating unit, and Najee has played extremely good football the last 2 weeks. I don't know what's gotten into him, but he's running hard, he's running aggressive. That run game is starting to come together. I think the whole Steelers offense might be coming together under Russell Wilson, so I would actually go Najee Harris in this one.
All right, Tracy Wolfson, by the way, has reported, just spoke with Dan Quinn. He feels really good with where Jaden is at and how he looked in that Friday practice. He will still work out pregame, but barring a last-minute setback, Jaden Daniels will start today. #Commanders. So there is the update everybody's been waiting for all day as it impacts, frankly, everybody's team. So it looks like, again, according to Tracy Wolfson, having spoken to Dan Quinn, it looks like Jaden will be playing. In the meantime, all we can do is say thank you so much for all of you that give us your time twice a week. Every Thursday, we're here from 7:30 to 8. We will be here on Halloween dressed in costume, handing candy out to kids. I don't know. It's going to be bedlam, but I know we'll be here. And I know we're back next Sunday from noon to 1 p.m. Eastern. On behalf of everybody that works their butts off behind the scenes, we couldn't do the show without them. Andy Behrens, Matt Harmon, Tera Roberts, I'm Jason Fitz. Thank you so much for watching Fantasy Football Live, presented by Ram Trucks. May every one of your teams lose and your enemies only, every one of your teams win and your enemies only lose.